think many of the English pundits and media that have been covering the English team over the last 6 to 8 weeks feel that there will be a backlash from England. There has to be a backlash. And when I say a backlash, I just mean an intensity in their performance. It was an embarrassment last week against France, humiliating defeat at home in front of 80-odd thousand paying supporters coming to watch that. That garbage, like it really was. It was hard viewing for many of my English friends who have been watching this English team for decades. But for me, it's not about England on Saturday. It's about Ireland, and that's what they'll be thinking about. It's this. Let's not worry what they throw at us. Scotland have thrown the kitchen sink at us. We've had numerous injuries and players switching positions, and we're able to deal with it. We've got a little bit nip and tuck over in Rome when Italy arguably played the best half of the Six Nations against Ireland, and they were able to deal with that. And the whole way through the championship, whatever challenges have been thrown up against them, they have been able to manage them. And I think there will be threats. There will be times on Saturday against England where they won't have the ball and they're going to have to make numerous tackles against big, strong, physical men who will have a point to prove, as I referenced there, after their defeat against France. So I just feel that they're up to it, and they're up to it and even more. And it doesn't matter if Dan Sheehan or Ronan Kelleher or Keelan Doris isn't fit. There's 2 or 3 guys that can step in. And yes, maybe they lose a couple of percent here and there in different aspects of the game, but they're going to come in and perform just as good. And Andy Farrell's talked about everybody buying in to what they're about, their culture, the way they're playing. It's not just the 15 or 23 lads that are taking the pitch every Saturday. It's a collective squad of maybe 40 lads that have been in and out of the Six Nations over the last couple of months. So yeah, it's a huge game. I was very fortunate to be a part of the game in 2009, creating a lot of history. It was repeated in 2018. I was in Twickenham that day. Some cracking rugby played in snowy, freezing cold conditions. I think it's going to be pretty tough this weekend with the weather conditions as well. But if they can go on and repeat history, and something that the English team were able to do in 2003 before the Rugby World Cup was win a Grand Slam. And everybody talks about Ireland peaking too soon, but I think if you go on and win a Grand Slam, it's hardly going to hamper your chances of winning a Rugby World Cup, is it? It's certainly going to go the other way, and the boys are going to thrive off that success, and hopefully they can get the job done. I don't think it's going to be a 30 or 40 point win. I think the bookies have got it at 15 points on the handicap. So it's going to be, very, very a lot tighter than people might expect. Even if you look back at that 2003 Rugby World Cup side of England, you had Martin Johnson, you had Lawrence Delano in the back row, you had Johnny Wilkinson, you had Will Greenwood, you had Jason Robinson. You had like 5 or 6 guys that played 10 out of 10 every single week. And then you look at the Ireland team, and you look at the way James Ryan has played during this tournament. He has been exceptional. Tag Burns, obviously went out injured. Ian Henderson then out injured. We're not sure who's going to partner up with him this weekend, but he has been unbelievable in the back row. Take your pick between Keelan Doris and Josh van der Fleer, and even Peter O'Mahony probably had one of his best games at the weekend. Then you have Johnny Sexton, the old timer, who just keeps knocking it out, and Hugo Keenan at fullback, and then the wings who are just in scintillating form. So there are a number of correlations between that 2003 winning side to Ireland side, and I think it's the consistency in the team selection and the big name players that are playing consistently in all the big games. And that's one thing with this English side at the weekend, is that last weekend Ellis Gaines was named captain, and I was expecting, he's going to relish this, he's going to be chomping at the bit, and he went into his shell. Like Don Brandt hardly carried the ball. Mario Toji, I was listening to Lawrence Delano podcast there, and he was talking that he was doing commentary. He didn't even mention his name once in the whole game. And this is somebody who's a British and Irish Lion who was voted by many to be the captain of the British and Irish Lions on the last tour, and he's nowhere to be seen in big games. And that's the difference at the minute. The Irish big name players are absolutely everywhere, covering every single blade of grass. They're annoying at the breakdown. They're dominant in the tackle. They're physical when it comes to set piece. They control the game well. If you're Johnny Sexton with the kicking tactics that they showed against Scotland, kept bringing the wingers up and nudging it in behind, put massive pressure. And everybody was thinking, oh yeah, that was a really good half by Scotland in the first half. But it was the pressure that Ireland continually put on them in that first half that wore them down. And then they ran out of ideas in the second half, and they started to force it a little bit, which played into Ireland's hands. And it's just brilliant tactics from the Irish side, but also defensively, they're very, very sound, and I think they've only conceded 5 tries so far in the championship, which is absolutely exceptional. Even way back then, Donny, when say lads had picked up a knock, whether it be say Draco or Stringer or something like that, like they were given until like captain's run to prove their fitness the following week. So like they didn't train all week long, and then they would have like a 20-minute run out and captain's run, and then like they would play on the Saturday again, and then probably pick up another niggle, and then not train the fully the next week again. Now that just doesn't happen. Like the game has changed as well. Not just the management of players and looking at injuries and assessing how guys are going to be, but looking back even with Joe Smith, if you didn't train fully on a Tuesday, you weren't in team selection. There might have been the very odd exception to like a World Cup quarter final, something like that. But this was happening week in and week out when I was playing. We were continually waiting on people. And I know it's said a lot, but the bin juice were out running about, doing all the training, and then the marquee players were coming in and running out for Ireland versus France or Ireland versus Wales in a Grand Slam decider. So yeah, it's changed, and the reason for that is because of squad depth, and I think also players nowadays are being given more opportunity in the bigger games. Like who would have thought Tom O'Toole would have been coming on for 20 minutes, half an hour against France and playing really well, and even at the weekend, Andy Farrell had no problem about bringing him on and having faith in his squad players. Where I think back then, I could easily list off 20 players that you would have seen playing every single week, and then if somebody got a chance, you'd be like, "Flipping heck, what's he doing in here? He's only played 120 times for Ulster. Like he shouldn't be playing for Ireland." So yeah, it's changed. And as I alluded to there, the game has changed. Like the physicality hasn't, but in terms of the way the ball is moved, the ball is in play for a lot longer. We're not seeing anywhere near the same amount of mauling, the same amount of longer rocks, the same amount of even choke tackles. You see back rowers now, Jack Conan and Keelan Doris, little offloads. There's always 2 or 3 options, which is holding the defence. Where, like, I know that the Legends game's on this weekend, so anybody around Dublin fancies a laugh, make sure and go down to Donnybrook on Friday evening. Shawnee O'Brien's playing, and he was like, said it during the week in a media interview, he's like, I'd love to play now, because back then it was like, give Shawnee the ball and run into a brick wall, give Stevie Ferris the ball, let him run into a brick wall. And it was like, no wonder we're all absolutely wrecked because that's all we were doing was giving the ball. Like we were telling Donnacha O'Callaghan and Paul O'Connell to get out of the way so that we could carry the ball and they could ruck over the top of us, instead of having Paulie as an option inside you and Donnacha on the outside, and Draco out the back, and see him again on the next phase. Like there was none of that. Like it was crazy when you actually think about it. And then the other side of the ball, you were trying to make that brick wall just to run up and smash people time and time again. So thankfully the game has changed, and I would love to have played it in this era, especially with guys like, imagine David Wallace, the way Ireland are playing at the minute. Very much like Josh van der Fleer, probably not the most skillful at throwing passes out the back, or but using footwork, putting guys into holes. Dennis Leamy as well, somebody with incredible hands. Me being able to keep a lot of width and hang out in the wider channels and feed off the likes of Gary Ringrose and Mac Hansen and James Lowe. Like, I'm going to go to bed tonight and actually dream about that. But yeah, I think that, when I keep rhyming off all these names, I think Ireland are just going to have too much for England at the weekend. And, are there comparisons with the 2009 team and the 2023 team? I think there are. I think there are some superstars on both those sides. But I think it's really difficult to say which team is better because the game has changed, and it is as simple as that.